Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He hath loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, alleluia. Glory, glory, alleluia. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. Welcome to the Voice of Reason with yours truly, Robert McNeily. And definitely his truth is marching on. As the Iranians found out earlier in the week, last week, it depends how you count it, but Saturday night into Sunday morning, they saw those strikes, and we know for sure that those sites have been obliterated. Tonight, I want to focus on what House Speaker Mike Johnson dove into this week. Federalist number 70. In his press conference, in fact, earlier in the week, talking about why Alexander Hamilton argued the Federalist position for a single strong executive and why President Trump has that executive authority per Article 2 in order to have called the strikes that he did, and House Speaker Mike Johnson rightfully pointing out the fact that in 1973, when the War Powers Act passed during the Nixon administration and during the Vietnam conflict, why that might be in and of itself unconstitutional, and questioning why the fact that the Democrat Party, at least those in the House, did not cry foul when President Barack Hussein Obama had 9+ strikes, unilateral strikes, not asking Congress, mind you, in order to conduct those. So Federalist number 70. This is written by none other than Alexander Hamilton. Saturday, March 15th of 1788, to the people of the state of New York. It argues for a strong single-person executive, a president in a constitutional republic in the newly proposed United States government. It directly addresses concerns that a powerful executive would resemble a monarchy, emphasizing that a unified and energetic executive is crucial for the governance and protection of liberty. Now, it's a rejection of the plural executive based on history. Hamilton refutes the idea of multiple persons or councils in the executive authority, that it would lead to division, disagreement, ultimately a bad government, as he puts it. There's energy in the executive. So Hamilton ends up describing and defining energy as the capacity for decisiveness, action, security, secrecy, and the ability to dispatch the United States military, protecting the nation from foreign threats, safeguarding the laws of the land and the liberty within a constitutional republic, accountability as well, while advocating for a strong executive. Hamilton details the needs for the accountability to be in place. He believed that a single executive, unlike a council or a group, would be easier to identify with any wrongdoing or hold it responsible and its defense against tyranny. He counters the anti-federalist argument of the time that a strong executive would lead to tyranny by pointing out that the Constitution includes those checks and balances. And you can argue, first off, that Article 1 details the Congress. It's almost meant to be the most powerful institution. Right now, I'd argue that we have a failed Congress in so many different ways, and therefore a failed branch of government. Some argue that there's an imperial presidency. I'll listen to what they have to say there. But as far as I see it, at least right now, we have a failure in the congressional apparatus and how it really is meant to act. First and foremost, the fact that you were supposed to go there for a period of time, not turn it into a 30, 40, 50-year career, making money and influence instead of actually serving your constituents. You were meant to be neighborly. Go there for a period of time to represent your district, your state, and then return and let the other minds enter that chamber of agreement, disagreement, dialogue in order to pass good bills and ultimately laws for your nation. Now, this example of the Roman Council, Hamilton really points it out extraordinarily well. It could be granted dictatorial powers at times of emergency to illustrate how a single executive could be both powerful and accountable. He dives into that argument right here, and I'll read through most of Federalist number 70 coming up, but it's unity, duration, separation of powers. Hamilton outlines the 4 key components of a strong executive, needing that in all times, whether it be peace or war, to the competent powers and to illustrate what's good about the Congress in the legislative branch, what's good about the judicial powers to basically be referee. And in turn, if you read through all the Federalist Papers, including number 51 by James Madison, it details how the judiciary was supposed to be the weakest in nature. And now we've seen the last half century, especially celebrating Dobbs Day and getting rid of Roe v. Wade. This was celebrated just yesterday, how the demon rat far left globalist agenda now has to go out there and actually win elections, actually has to appeal to you, the American people, instead of forcing a legislative agenda from the bench. And we've seen the lawfare. We've seen the Russia hoax. We've seen the fake impeachments. We've seen assassination attempts against the 45th and 47th president of the United States. But all we need to do is return to our founding documents and argue that. That's why I call President Trump the Federalist president, the 10th Amendment president, states' rights. It's not a whistle or a call to slavery or white Southern racists. No, it's a call to the rule of law. It's a call to law and order. It's a call to republicanism, as Alexander Hamilton brilliantly details in Federalist number 70. It's safety through dependence and responsibility. He also emphasizes that the chief executive's safety in a Republican sense, not the party, but the shape and form of the government, the rule of law, everyone equal under that law, comes from its dependence on the people and its responsibility to them. So let's dive into what's a little bit of Old English, but Federalist number 70, the executive department further considered Saturday, March 15th, 1788, penned by none other than Alexander Hamilton to the people of the state of New York. There is an idea which is not without its advocates, that a vigorous executive inconsistent with the genius of Republican government. The enlightened well-wishers of this species of government must at least hope that the supposition is destitute of its foundation, since they can never admit its truth without at the same time admitting the condemnation of their own principles. It is essential to the protection of the community against foreign attacks. It is not less essential, but it is essential to the protection of the community against those attacks, to the steady administration of the laws, to the protection of property against those irregular and high-handed combinations which sometimes interrupt the ordinary course of justice, to the security and liberty against the enterprises and assaults of ambition, of faction, and of anarchy. Every man, the least conversant in Roman story, knows how often that republic was obliged to take refuge in the absolute power of a single man under the formidable title of dictator, as well as against the intrigues of ambitious individuals who aspire to the tyranny and seditions of whole classes of the communities whose convictions were conducted and threatened the existence of all government, and against the invasions of external enemies who menace the conquest and destruction of Rome. He then goes, therefore, this is Hamilton talking about the Roman history records many instances of mischiefs to the republic from the dissensions between the councils and between the military tribunals and the tribunes who were once at times substituted by the councils. But it gives us no specimens of any peculiar advantages derived to the state from the circumstances of the plurality those magistrates, so that these dissensions between them were not more or frequent or more fatal, is a matter of astonishment. until we advert to the singular position in which the republic was almost continually placed, to the prudent policy pointed out by the circumstances of the state and pursued by the councils of making a division of the government between them. So he then dives more into the interest as we go deeper into number 70, really the difference at the time between England and the newly put together United States of America. In England, the king is a perpetual magistrate, and it is a maxim which has obtained for the sake of public peace that he is unaccountable for his administration and his person sacred. Nothing, therefore, can be wiser in that kingdom than to annex to the king a constitutional council, who may be responsible to the nation for the advice they give. Without this, there would be no responsibility whatever in the executive department, an idea inadmissible in a free government. But even there, the king is not bound by the resolution of his council, though they are answerable for the advice they give. He is the absolute master of his own conduct in the exercise of his office, and may observe or disregard the counsel given to him at his sole discretion. So this is so important here because the Federalist argument at the time was not only constructing the Constitution in its terms. Now, really, the Anti-Federalists and Federalists, as much as they battled over many different topics, all brilliant men, really it's the Federalist argument, thank God, that won out. And per Senator Ted Cruz's dissertation when he was at Harvard Law School, he talks about this. Thank you to God that the Federalists won out this argument in the construct that the Bill of Rights, number 1 through 10, our first 10 amendments, were to be added to the Constitution. Now, the Anti-Federalist argument at the time was against what Hamilton is saying here in number 70, simply stating that the Constitution provides for all these freedoms, where the Federalists said, no, you need these certain inalienable rights, which we agree comes from God on high. You need that in the document because there may be men come 249 years down the road who may stand up and say things like gun control. You don't own that right to that gun. You don't deserve it. You don't deserve free speech. You could have a situation of the nation that this nation, America, found its freedom from, could turn its back on its 13th century documents of Magna Carta and Western civilization altogether. What are we seeing today? And as great as of a relationship that President Trump has with UK Prime Minister Starmer, and the great trade deals we have with the United Kingdom, and thank God for Brexit and the liberty movement and independence that is happening in the UK. People are fighting for it. The powers that be do not believe in freedom of speech. For what I'm saying right now, or for example, standing up to the London mayor who wants to arrest American citizens for speaking their minds when they're on United Kingdom soil, is that something that is inspired by Magna Carta? Is it inspired by our founding documents? I think not. And that's exactly the brilliance of the Federalist argument, to put the Bill of Rights enshrined into our founding documents so that no person, no legislature, no king, no dictator could take that away. No court could take that away from the American people. Now, to continue this, in a republic where every magistrate ought to be personally responsible for his behavior in office, the reason which in the British Constitution dictates the propriety of a council not only ceases to apply, but turns against the institution. In the monarchy of Great Britain, it furnishes a substitute for the prohibited responsibility of the chief magistrate, which serves in some degree as a hostage to the national justice for his good behavior. In the American Republic, it would serve to destroy or would greatly diminish the intended and necessary responsibility of the chief magistrate himself. Hook, line, and sinker, Alexander Hamilton is arguing that the president has certain authorities per Article 2 of the Constitution, and that is defending the homeland against all enemies, foreign and domestic. In fact, he swears an oath on it. That same oath that every public office holder takes. Some believe in it, and some don't to this day. It's brilliant to look in Federalist number 70, written on March 15th of 1788 by Alexander Hamilton to the people of New York, to really dive into what separated our states at that time, to see the wisdom in it now nearly 250 years later, and to have a constitutional law attorney like House Speaker Mike Johnson so eloquently laying out his argument and why his dear friend Congressman Massey of the Commonwealth of Kentucky seems to not see it this way, seems to believe that the War Powers Act of 1973 is somehow constitutional, and somehow Article 1 in this situation, although they're co-equal branches of government, would usurp the power and the authority of the President of the United States, who, mind you, has been the most investigated, the most gone after with lawfare and fake impeachments and assassination attempts more than any other modern president. More than most presidents. We've had 4 impeachments. 2 have been against Donald Trump. And just for fair measure, the other 2, Bill Clinton and Andrew Johnson. Why am I talking about all this today? The founding documents, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Federalist Papers, the brilliance of James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and the founding fathers who gave up their life, their liberty, their sacred honor, pledged all of that in order to save and create a great nation that turned from 13 colonies into 13 states into sea to shining sea, 50 states and 6 territories. And perhaps we'll get that 51st state in the future, that beautiful Canada that looks so nice in Alberta, Canada, during the G7 summit. Well, we have a special interview for you today to celebrate what's been this Jubilee year of America, going into 250 years, 1 year from now, in the beautiful Iowa State Fairgrounds. We look forward to that celebration. But how can we do such due diligence in honoring the Constitution, our founding documents, and the men that came together to save really a continent in turn? I wonder if they would have known that this American experiment, this ethos, this amazing North American continent would be led by the United States of America. I had the privilege of interviewing Mark Hill. This is a gentleman who is working on the Theodore Omen story, a legacy project for a declaration and constitution in every single school in America. How you can help with this by visiting bigparty250.com and by learning about an immigrant story, a legal immigrant, Theodore Omen, who came to the United States of a Bohemian background, who suffered at the hands of tyranny and who fell in love with these founding documents of America and wanted to share this great blessing of the American nation with everyone he came into contact with. Let's toss it to our exclusive interview with Mark Hill, who is about to share the Theodore Omen story. We have a very special guest tonight on The Voice of Reason, Mark Hill, who's working to get the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution into every classroom across America with a very special all-American story behind it. Mark, tell us more about your mission and the mission of a gentleman who is no longer with us, but loved this country perhaps more than anything else in his life.
Well, thank you, first of all, Robert, for having me on. I really appreciate it. Big fan of what you guys are doing. And quite honestly, every time President Trump is doing something, I usually watch it on your site because I know you're going to cover everything that he does. But so, yes, I want to reboot the mission that was originally undertaken by a gentleman named Theodore Omen in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And that was to get a Declaration and Constitution into every school in the nation, but not just any Declaration and Constitution. He spent years creating the finest lithographs or replicas of our nation's founding documents ever made. And I do want to just tell you a little bit about who he was, why he did what he did, and how he did what he did. So he was a Bohemian immigrant who came to this country in 1912 at the age of 20. He was a civil engineer and a map maker by trade, and he made his home in Memphis, Tennessee. Now, two things happened in his life in Bohemia that are very important to his story. The first thing is, as a schoolboy, he was taught about the Declaration of Independence, which is pretty amazing in itself because at that time, the Austro-Hungarian Empire did not want people talking about democratic ideals, much less school teachers teaching about it. You know, they were trying to still hang on to power at the time. When he came over here, it was actually 2 years before World War I started. He actually lived very close to Franz Ferdinand. Franz Ferdinand's castle, it was obviously, you know this, Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie, it was their assassination that actually started World War I. So that's the first thing that happened. And the second thing is he learned the art of lithography from his grandfather. Okay? So he thought the Declaration was the greatest document ever written. He comes over here, is super happy, obviously, to be in America. Eventually, he makes his way to Washington, D.C. to see the Declaration in person. And when he gets there, he is shocked at the shape it's in. It's in very poor condition. It's faded, it's worn, and he was very disappointed. So he goes back to Memphis and he decides to use his skills as a lithographer to create a replica of the Declaration as to how it looked when it was signed. Now, we're talking about the 1930s. So we don't have the technology, he didn't have the technology we do now. So how he did that is actually very ingenious, and it took a bit of luck too. He found, to perfect the script of his lithograph, he actually found and purchased a stone print. William Stone made 200 copies in 1823. There's less than 40 known in existence today. He found one and he purchased it. And that's what he used to perfect the script of his piece. Now, when Stone made his, it took William Stone like 3 years to create his facsimile. And how he did it is he actually laid ink, it was a wet process. He drew ink off the original and laid it down onto a copper plate and then spent about 3 years etching that copper plate. And then he ran 200 copies. So that, most people think that's what started the degradation of the Declaration of Independence, was when Stone made his reprints. So that was the first thing. The second thing Ullman did was he did some research and found out there was a gentleman named L.C. Handy who took photographs of the original outside his case in 1903. So he went, L.C. Handy had passed away. He went to his widow and purchased a set of negatives from his widow, and that is what he used to create the background of his piece. So it took a stroke of luck. Just the fact that he found a stone print is extremely lucky. And then I know he spent about 4 years doing it. And when he was done with his stone print, he actually donated it to the Library of Congress. He did that in 1939. He was done using it for what he needed it to be used for, and he donated to the Library of Congress, which is really amazing. But he loved his adopted country, and I know he did that happily and joyfully. But so anyway, do you have a question? I'm sorry.
It's nothing short of fascinating, the entire story, how this came to be. And can you tell us just some of the prints and the replications you have behind you? Because I've had the privilege of actually viewing these myself and seeing what you have on display in order to continue this great mission.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'm going to grab my phone and I'll reverse it and actually show you some of these artifacts and the prints that I'm talking about. So, oh boy. So how do I reverse the image? I don't think I do. I'm going to have to. Okay, this is going to be tough. You tell me, Bobby, when you can. I don't know how to do this. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No, we can actually see what you have on display there too. If you just want to face the image
Okay.
down there, that's perfect.
Can you see it right now? Okay, so I'll show you a few of the artifacts. This is a positive glass plate of his declaration, which he referred to as Ullman's authentic restoration of the Declaration of Independence. And you can see the tape there.
Yes,
Bobby,
we can see the tape in the image. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that the story goes that he actually broke this so people couldn't reproduce his work. And that tape is very, very old. So I believe that story. I actually heard that story from the gentleman I bought this collection from, who was a personal friend of Theodore Ullman's. So this is a negative glass plate of his declaration. I think it's one of the most beautiful pieces in this collection. This is the back side of a negative plate, and everywhere you see that smudging, that grayish and brownish, that's a technique called silvering, which cleans up the back side so the front side looks perfect. Bobby, this is absolutely the most interesting piece. Can you see that well?
It's coming through clear. Yes, sir.
Okay, great. This is what the Declaration looks like right now. This is an emulsion on glass plate that Ullman made from the set of negatives he bought from L.C. Handy's wife. So you can see how worn it is, how faded it is. You can't even read some of the names of the signers. But this is what it looks like right now. We took this to the National Archives Lab several years ago, and their heads exploded. They had no idea how it existed. But, of course, it exists because Ullman got his hands on a set of negatives of when it was taken, when L.C. Handy took a picture of it.
Mm.
So, let's see. Here's the actual piece. This was printed in 1942. You got a good shot of it there, Bobby?
Oh, it's fantastic.
Okay. So this is an original Ullman Declaration printed in 1942, after working about 4 or 5 years on it. This is just a beautiful piece, the only piece that actually matches up the script perfectly and the background, because the original was written on a piece of animal skin. So a lot of the cracks and crevices are unique to that animal. So when he was done with this a few years later, what he did was he started working on his Constitution with the Bill of Rights printed at the bottom. This, after many years of work, I know at least 4 years, he printed in 1953. And here's just a couple of artifacts. Here's the glass plate of page 1. Apologize for the shadow there. Here's a negative glass plate of page 1 of the Constitution. This is actually a 4-page pamphlet that he wrote. You can see this on our website. This is the story he wrote himself under a pen name. It's a beautiful story. It'll almost make you cry at the end. And then this box, I always like to show this box because I know he printed his Constitution in 1953, but you see the date there, 4/29/49. So it says that he has at least And he had at least 4 years of his life wrapped up in creating this piece. So these are his masterpieces. They're the arguably the finest replicas ever made of our nation's founding documents. And when he was done in 1953, he immediately embarked on his mission to get a set in every school. I'm going to real quick, Bobby, show you. So since I only have about a dozen of his declarations left, I got a few thousand of his constitutions left. I had to make reprints. There's 115,000 K through 12 schools. And here are the reprints. Can you see all four?
Oh, yes, they're fantastic.
Okay. And so what we're looking for, to reboot his mission, we're reaching out to people like yourself who can help us create awareness and to help us reboot Omen's mission. If you go to the website that I put up is actually a website I put up to get ready for the biggest party we're ever going to throw, and that's July 4th of 2026, our 250th anniversary. These are on that website is Big Party 250. That's bigparty250.com. And you can purchase a set of these. And what we're looking for is as many people as possible would purchase a set and get them framed and then hang them in a school near them, maybe a school they went to. You get 4 prints with every order. The large set, I would suggest you framing those and hanging them right inside the foyer of the school so everybody that walks in and out of that building sees them. And then the small set, I would suggest framing them and hanging them in the classroom where American history is taught. And I will turn this back around, Bobby. Sorry about that.
No, that's fantastic, Mark. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I will make a commitment here on the Voice of Reason. I will be purchasing a set myself and sending it to my alma mater. And hopefully I can get that in my elementary school, my middle school, my high school, because I loved history class myself. We've had these conversations the years that I've known you and how important this mission is. So I'd like to partake in it personally. But also, can you share with us, too, how far did Theodore get in this mission of getting these founding documents into the school, the replications of them, so that they could be taught before he passed away?
Well, like I said before, it was the 50s, 60s, and 70s when he embarked on his mission. And I don't know exactly how many schools he touched, but it was 20 plus years of his life. But I do want to tell you how he did it, because it's very interesting how he went about doing it. He would drive into a town and he would look for the biggest bank. And he would go pitch a set to the bank and he would say, I won't sell a set of these to any other bank in your town, but if you buy a set, I insist you buy a set for every school in your local school district. And that's how he did it. And then he would suggest that the bank, if they did it, then that they, call up their local newspaper, maybe even a TV station at the time, and kind of make a big deal about it. So that's how we did it. The reason I actually own this collection is because Omen in the 60s drove in to Genoa, Illinois, where I was born and raised and still live today. And he was pitching a set to the Genoa State Bank, which was the only bank in town at that time. And a man named William Utley, who was a businessman in town, overheard the conversation. He invited Theodore Omen to lunch. They became friends. Okay. When Theodore Omen passed in 1982, Bill Utley drove down to Memphis and bought the entire collection, all the plates, all the prints, and he did more than just these 2 things. He did a wonderful 1940s relief map with the census printed on the back. It's a beautiful piece too. I have very few of those left, I do. But so Bill Utley drives him back to Genoa, Illinois, and they puts him in a nice, dark, cool place in a basement of the building that he ran a business out of, and there they sat. And then me and my brother actually rented the basement of his building where these things were. And he told us all these stories about Theodore Oman. It was really interesting. He shared all that information with us. And then when his health started failing, he sold his business. He wanted to move down to Dallas, Texas to be near his daughter. So he sold me and my brother the building on one contract and sold us the Oman collection on the other. He didn't want to drag it down to Dallas with him. So that's how I ended up with it. So it's just interesting. I wanted to tell you that story because the fact that just all the stars aligned and Theodore Oman ends up driving in to Genoa, Illinois. And the fact that he was actually in this town pitching the Genoa State Bank. So that's how we did it. I don't know how many. I do know that his biggest customer, I guess if you would say that, was a bank in Houston who bought a set for every school in Harris County. So I know that because that's a story Bill Utley told me, and Bill told me that that's most of the information I know about Theodore Oman. It comes through him, and I'm so glad that I sat and listened to him because his story is so interesting. He loved his adopted country. He just absolutely loved it, and I think his mission was a noble one. And I want to reboot it because I think everybody needs to know more about our founding documents, especially students. So I really appreciate you helping me get this message out. I did take the liberty of putting a promo code on our website. If you want to buy a set of bigparty250.com, if you put in RSBN, you'll get a nice discount.
Well, thank you for the shout out. We appreciate that. It's an easy code to remember.
I want to make sure your audience knows that. So, we're looking for as many people as possible. I will be keeping track on the website of every school that participates, every person who participates, every school that gets a set donated to. So when you do it, my phone number and email address are right on the website. Definitely let me know what school that you're sending these to, and I'll make sure and send me pictures and even videos, because I do want to keep track of this as a way to kind of get ready for the 250th anniversary of our great country. I see that President Trump is going to have a big kickoff in Des Moines here shortly.
We're all very excited about it, and I was interested too, Mark, is that original print that showed the condition of where Theodore found the Declaration and the founding documents really in disarray, that's all been fixed now, correct? And that's what's in the Oval Office, the original Declaration of Independence. And do you happen to know how that might have been fixed? Because I wasn't as familiar that...
The original Declaration has not been fixed. It's in the shape it's in. I do believe that the copy that President Trump has in his office is actually a stone print, because the stone print did not do anything about the background. William Stone simply etched, he drew ink off the original, laid it down, etched it into a copper plate. So he had no way to recreate the background. And that's what's very interesting about Oman's work, is he not only perfected the script, but he perfected the background, because the cracks and crevices are unique to the piece of animal skin the original was written on. And so that's what makes Oman's work so very unique. And then the fact that he took and created a matching sized Constitution, that matched the size of the Declaration. Nobody's ever done that before. He added the Bill of Rights at the bottom, printed. And so when you hang them side by side, they're beautiful. They're nice and symmetrical, and they're just wonderful documents. I have a set in my home. The large set is, the frame is probably about 36 by 42. They're not small pieces. So, I'm looking for all the help I can get to try to get a set of these in every school in the nation. And if anybody participates, please go onto the website, bigparty250.com, get a hold of me, because I want to talk with you.
Mark Hill, you're doing some incredible, noble work, and it gives me goosebumps to talk about, even from the first time I saw all of these prints in your studio, because it's such a touching idea about the American dream and the fact that a man of Bohemian background came to this country under the Austrian-Hungarian Empire and became an American legally, loved these founding documents, and it changed his life. And he was on a mission to get these documents into every single school in the land. And now you're continuing this because you happen to really stumble upon it. I mean, that's what's amazing about, I tell people all the time, look around you, because the history that's just around you down the street, you may not realize it could have been something that changed the course of human history. And our founding documents definitely did that and stand the test of time today. Mark, before we part and continue this amazing mission that you're on, fulfilling Theodore Altman's vision for having the founding documents in every single school across America, what will it be like for administrators and teachers and the students to reflect upon these beautiful documents in their main foyers, their walkways, as they enter and exit school on a daily basis to learn about the greatness of this constitutional republic nearly 250 years young?
Yeah, it's, I always like to say that if they're on your wall, they're on your mind. You know, and I have a set on my wall behind everything that I showed you. And I wake up every day. I don't take this country for granted. And I never will. I was very fortunate, you know, that God put me down in DeKalb County, Illinois, to wonderful parents, 2 fantastic brothers, lovely sister, salt of the earth, you know, cousins and everything, 4 kids, rock solid. I am so fortunate to have all that, and then to be able to live in freedom. And I'll just never take that for granted. So if they're on your wall, they're on your mind. That's why I have them hanging on my wall, to be quite honest, because I get up every day and see them and reflect on them.
Mark Hill, continuing the mission of Theodore Altman, getting these declarations, these constitutions, our Bill of Rights, our founding documents into every American school. And you can join in that effort. And we look forward to helping facilitate that right here on RSBN. Mark, thank you for joining the Voice of Reason. We look forward to seeing you in Des Moines, Iowa. And please come back to the show anytime.
We'll catch up with you in Des Moines, Robert. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
God bless you. Thank you, sir.
God bless you. Bye-bye.
And again, thank you to Mark Hill of the Theodore Altman Legacy Project, a declaration and constitution in every school. I can't wait to put that in my alma mater, and I hope you join me with this amazing project. You can learn more at bigparty250.com. That's bigparty250.com. Thank you to Mark Hill, the Theodore Altman story, the Legacy Project, a declaration and constitution in every school. Thank you for indulging us on this Voice of Reason, another Thursday evening in America, because our founding documents matter. They matter to the arguments being made right now. And thankfully, we have a House Speaker in Mike Johnson who brought up Federalist number 70, those pesky Federalist Papers. And to conclude the reading of this great, very thoroughly thought through documents, Alexander Hamilton writing on March 15th of 1788, to the people of New York, I forbear to dwell upon the subject of expense, though it be evident that if the council should be numerous enough to answer the principal end aimed at by the institution, the salaries of the members who must be drawn from their homes to reside at the seat of government would form an item in the catalog of public expenditures too serious to be incurred for an amount of equivocal utility. I will only add that prior to the appearance of the Constitution, I rarely met with an intelligent man from any of the states who did not admit, as the result of experience, that the unity of the executive of this state was one of the best of the distinguishing features of our Constitution. Now, to give context of this as well, New York had no council except for the single purpose of appointing officers. Also, New Jersey had a council at the time who the governor may consult with, but in terms of the Constitution was non-binding. So this is directly in a rebuttal to the anti-federalist position, which, according to Senator Ted Cruz, this also connects to his thesis dating back to his days at Harvard. You know, that school, Harvard, Boston, Massachusetts, that President Trump has been talking about on a regular basis, sadly going far and away from its purpose founded in the 17th century. But it happened to educate great people like Senator Ted Cruz, who said the Federalist argument against the anti-federalist at the day was to keep the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, in the Constitution enshrined because they were inalienable rights that years later, maybe men and women would come to infringe upon. And we know that happening now with the Demon Rat Party. So that leads me into the winners and the losers of this week on The Voice of Reason. And the winners, oh, it's a great group of people. Our National Security Council, led by President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, including General Dan Raisin Kane, because all five of those amazing individuals, they would look to the great people who carried out from the Air Force and from our military the strikes on Iran on Saturday night in America around that 7:30 p.m. Eastern mark. It was early Sunday morning in Iran when they struck those nuclear facilities so swiftly, undetected, with B-2 bombers, followed by Tomahawks. 30,000 plus bombs to drop on those three sites to make them thus far inoperable. Thank you to President Trump for that leadership, for the speech given on Saturday night, thanking God for his majesty, for his blessings upon this incredible nation, and to see this mission through. It's an amazing thing in the making, nearly 50 years. As I mentioned on the live desk, I watched Argo over the weekend. I watched Top Gun Maverick. Sometimes Hollywood gets it right, and sometimes it's good to go into fiction and nonfiction about the issues of our day. The living predecessors, those presidents, they talked a big game against Iran and said that they could never have the weapon. President Trump acted, and it took him a matter of minutes. Incredible strategic planning that lasted countless months and weeks into this Operation Midnight Hammer. An amazing job by the civilian and military forces of the United States government. Well job, gentlemen and ladies. And the losers of the week, the legacy media and those, you know who you are, that put out intelligence information that was incomplete, who ran with it, who took leaks that we are now seeing might be coming directly from the United States government and the Demon Rat, League of Shadows, globalist agenda that seeks to harm the United States. Shame on you for clickbait. Shame on you to put those great people who flew those planes from Missouri to the enemy and then back, a 36-hour trip. You would want to put them in harm's way? You want to put their family members in harm's way for a story? How dare you? You are the losers of the week, the legacy media. That's what we do here on The Voice of Reason. We talk politics, we talk punchlines, we talk music, sports, culture, and what's affecting you on a daily basis, inside and outside of the Beltway, and also in your neck of the woods. So you're always welcome to write in to Right Side Broadcasting Network feedback at rsbn.tv. Tell us a story or two that you want featured on The Voice of Reason, because we will not shy away from the issues of the day. We won't run away from those tough questions. We'll dive right into it, and it will always be a pleasure to do so every Thursday evening at 6 o'clock Eastern. The Voice of Reason with yours truly, Robert McNeily. Thank you for being with us on this Thursday evening, June 26. We'll have a big week ahead, and we look forward to sharing even more with you in this great country that we get to call the United States of America. Have a wonderful evening. God bless you and yours, and we'll see you next week on The Voice of Reason.